What's up, everyone? Welcome to the State by State Investing Podcast, your ultimate guide to real estate investing across the United States and Puerto Rico. My name is Melissa Ryan, and today I am so excited to be talking to Amy Rende from my home state of Michigan. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's nice to be able to get together and talk about what's going on across the country.
For sure. And so on this channel, we're talking to real estate investors from every single state just to show the audience that you can invest in any state. So tell us how you got started investing in Michigan.
Yeah, so actually about 20 years ago, my husband and I started investing in real estate, but we did it out of state. We bought some short-term vacation rentals in Maui, actually in the state of Hawaii, and we managed them long lines. And so about 4 years ago, right after COVID, I was mom to twin daughters who were going through kindergarten and first grade doing the virtual learning. And I just realized working full time and doing that was not something I could sustain. And so I decided to quit my job and start flipping houses here in Michigan and jumped in with both feet, started, bought one property soon onto the next and on the next. And I had probably two or three flips going at once initially. And so just dove in. Realized that while I do love flipping, I like the continuity and the passive income of long-term rentals. And so we did a 1031 exchange on one of our properties in Hawaii and bought several properties here in Michigan. And now there are long-term rentals. And so we've continued to acquire long-term rentals here in the state of Michigan because believe it or not, the cash flow is much better here in Michigan than it is in Hawaii, even on a short-term rental. So we've been able to just continue both, buying with cash and creatively acquiring different properties where we have some here in the Metro Detroit area and then some also over on the west side of the state in Battle Creek, and we're expanding into Kalamazoo.
Okay. Wow. And so many people don't know that Michigan actually has an upper peninsula and a lower peninsula. So you are mostly or probably solely
100%.
investing
Yeah.
in the lower peninsula.
Yep, all in the lower peninsula. I'm in the Metro Detroit area. I have done flips in the city of Detroit. I own rental properties in the metro area or the suburbs, and kind of more towards the center of the state, which is Ann Arbor, and the west side of lower Michigan, which is the Battle Creek, Kalamazoo area. So I think Michigan is a great place to invest because the entry points are still relatively low in relation to the rent that you can charge. And so, for example, a lot of the rental properties that I purchased were anywhere between 100,000 to maybe 130,000, and the rent on those is anywhere from 1,400 up to 1,800. And so it's really a cash flowing market, very, you know, for the most part, you can look for a lot of times people look at the 1% rule when they're looking at long-term rentals. Here in Michigan, you can be anywhere from like 1.2 to 1.8, sometimes 2 if you're looking at that ratio. And so it really can cash flow well. And like I said, the entry point to get in is much lower than, let's say, California or something along those lines.
Right. That's like a tenth
Yeah,
of the cost. I'm out here in California, so
I know.
wow.
Yeah, I know, I know. And so there's, every state has its nuances. Now, we are not as landlord friendly as some other states in our country, but I would say I've gone through several evictions. I would say it's not the worst state. There is probably a 60 to 90-day window that it takes to get somebody out of the property if you have to go through an eviction, but it definitely doesn't linger for months and months like it does, in some other states.
Yeah, 60 to 90 days actually doesn't sound that long to me. I'm kind of surprised there. I've heard 6 months and longer. So that's not bad at all. So you are primarily focused on buy and holds. I know you've done some fix and flips in the
Yep.
past, but
Yeah, and actually we're finishing up. We have one under contract right now. In Michigan, we're very driven on the weather, especially for fixing and flipping. The summer is the hottest time to sell a flip. So we have currently one under contract, and we're going to be listing another one next week. And so we really try to capitalize on the time of year to do our fix and flips because those are definitely the most lucrative times to do it. So we try to be as strategic as we can about when we pick up those projects and try to list them during the summer.
okay, so that means you have to back it up. How long does it take to do a fix and flip?
Depending, usually anywhere from 3 to 4 months, depending on the extent of the rehab. So we try to secure something early spring, late winter, knowing that we could list it June, July, August. And so that's usually the time we start looking for our flips is February, March, April, so we can get those closed and start working on them right away.
Got it. And so the what is your strategy for purchasing, analyzing, selecting a market of your long-term rentals?
One of the biggest things I look for is a growing market, one where the job trend is very stable or going up. We definitely don't like to go into declining markets. Every city and every state is very unique. So some people will say, this state is bad for doing your, investing in. And I don't like to say that because I think every area is very unique. So when we look at a zip code, we look at population trends. So we look to see if the trend is going up, staying flat, or declining. We really try to stay away from declining areas. There are certain areas here in Michigan where there is a high population of rentals. So, for example, I had mentioned the Ann Arbor area. And so there's a suburb of Ann Arbor called Ypsilanti. So Ann Arbor proper is very, very high cost of living. You've got University of Michigan, you've got the University of Michigan Health System. In its sister community, Ypsilanti, you have Eastern Michigan University, and you have some other health systems. So a lot of people cannot afford to rent or buy in Ann Arbor, and so they get pushed to Ypsilanti. And so that has really driven the prices up as well as the rental market. So the demand is always very, very high. So that is one of the areas that we look at because we understand that if people can't afford to live in one area, Ann Arbor, the demand for the second largest city is always going to be there. So we try to look at factors like that to make sure, the schools are good, that it's a rising population, that crime is, relatively stable or declining, if at all possible. So those are some of the factors that we look at.
That's really good. Where do you get the information? What are your resources?
Honestly, you can look at the statistics for labor. You can Google it, population in, whatever zip code, and it will tell you historically what the population has been. Now, sometimes it goes back to the last census, but there is some other data that you can usually pull to see where it's been and where it's been falling. You can always look at the school districts. I think that's a great point too, because if it's a good school district, you're probably going to have a high number of people wanting to buy or rent. And the great thing about that is if you do go to sell your property, it's also going to be a popular place to sell your property. So we like to always have multiple exit strategies if at all possible. And that goes with our flips too. If we are flipping a property and, for example, we're not able to sell it, we like to have it also in a strong rental market where it will still cash flow if it's a long-term rental.
That's so good. And do you have a team helping you with this?
So I actually work on a couple different teams. We have a team that we've established for wholesaling. So we have some marketing that we do to wholesale properties. And a lot of times that's where we get our fix and flips because we kind of cherry pick the deals that come through and then wholesale them to other investors if they don't necessarily meet our criteria. So I'm working with a couple people out of Owners Club on that, Carlos Vasquez and Angel Lastra. They're two great guys that really like to dive into the wholesaling. And then I work with different people on different projects. So my husband and I own the portfolio here in the Ann Arbor area, but then I have another partner that I deal with out on the west side of Michigan. So I think it's really nice to work collaboratively with different people because everybody brings something different in terms of skill set. And that's the one thing I've noticed when I tried to do it all myself, when I started flipping houses, it was me and I was working with my contractors. And you're only able to go so far if you're not partnering with other people. And so I really felt like as I was able to connect with other people, it allowed me to do more faster. And so that's what I've enjoyed doing. And we're actually now starting to look at buying businesses as well, things that support properties, ideally a property management company, but we're looking at a landscaping company right now. We would like to get into other home services that could help us support the properties that we own.
How about a snowplow business?
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that because the landscaping company that we're under LOI on also does snow removal.
You hear
So,
that?
yep, exactly. You can't get away from it in Michigan.
And you're looking at the businesses only in Michigan as well.
For the time being, yes, because I really like to get my arms around things. I like to be able to get out there, look at what's going on, work with the teams. I think it's just really important. Not to say once we get things scaled, we wouldn't look at acquiring across the country, but I think for the time being, it makes sense to just look in the state and really learn as much as we can. And then if we want to scale, we could go out of state.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is in your portfolio right now?
As far as properties
Yes.
or yes, so we have single family houses. We have quite a few duplexes. We have a triplex, a 4 unit, a 9 unit. So we're really starting to get into that multifamily space right now. We're looking at, 6 units and above. What we've noticed is the management and the maintenance on larger buildings tends to be lower because you're just looking at one roof, right? You're looking at everything either being under one building or multiple buildings. So that's where we're looking to go now. We're looking to scale into more multifamily. The single families have been great. They definitely have strong appreciation, and we will continue to hold on to those. But getting into multifamily at a higher level is what we anticipate doing over the next couple years.
And so as you scale, will you bring in more team members or do you currently have property managers?
So I'm actually self-managing. So that ends up being kind of a lot, which is why we want to acquire a property management company. Now, on each of the properties that we do have, I do work with other partners and they're involved in the property management as well, but it definitely becomes a lot. I've just never been able to find a good property management company that I trust to hand the properties off to. They don't seem to be as interested in getting the properties filled when there's a vacancy like I do, or maintaining the properties if there's an issue with maintenance. And it's really hard to let go and have that go to somebody else and pay them if you know you can do a better job. And so that's what I've been struggling with, letting go, having somebody else do it. I would rather do it to a related party if I could acquire a property management company, put the systems in place, then I know my properties are under good management, so to speak, and we can continue to grow and scale that way. So that is definitely something I'm struggling with. But one thing that I do want to mention is, and I think you and I have talked about this before, Melissa, is one of the things we really like to do is partner with nonprofits here in the area. We have some relationships with Safe House, Safe Place,
Mhm.
and those are organizations that help find housing and safety for domestic violence victims. And that's really near and dear to our hearts. I've been fortunate that when I do have vacancies come up, I can contact those agencies and help fill with people coming out of those shelters, which has been amazing. That's one of the reasons I want to continue to scale so we can provide more housing to people in need, such as that. People don't realize that there's a lot of, not only is there housing shortage, but when somebody's coming out of a shelter, maybe hasn't had their own house because they've been living with somebody, and maybe has children, there are avenues that they can get support. And we've been very fortunate to help provide housing through those resources to people coming out of shelters. So that's something that's really important to us.
Yeah, that's very near and dear to my heart as well.
I know.
Out here in California, it's a huge issue, the whole sex trafficking, and
Yes.
people don't realize how big it is, especially.
People don't. We don't. We kind of live in our bubbles, thankfully, but it is out there. And I think increasing awareness and helping where we can will make a huge impact, especially a group like ours that do want to get involved on a national level. I think that will make a huge impact for people across the country. And that's what I'm most excited about.
So is that part of your Mount Everest? And what is your Mount Everest?
So my Mount Everest, I have kind of two prongs. One is to acquire businesses that will support property management to manage my portfolio. So like we talked about, a property management company, landscaping, plumbing, HVAC, anything that will support the services that we'll need as property management. And then the other one is to acquire properties, multifamily, in the multifamily space, and work as extensively as we can with these organizations that support sex trafficking victims and domestic violence victims so that we can help continue to provide housing for them. And there are some local companies that just need some direction. They want to help, they just don't know how. So we're even thinking about potentially creating a foundation that could help us streamline the support for those victims, which would be amazing if we can make that happen.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of good things going on in Owners Club.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Super excited about it.
And so tell me about your favorite project that you've worked on.
So, right now, we're actually in an interesting project. We're actually doing a novation, and it's my first novation. I don't know if you've ever done a novation.
I haven't.
Um, okay, so we are working with a homeowner. It's an Ann Arbor property, which is on the higher end of cost of living here in Michigan. And she has not had the time or the money to put anything into the property like she should have. So, things are just outdated. It was built in like the 1970s. And so the fixtures, the paint colors, the flooring are all pretty outdated, as well as the kitchen. And so she didn't want to put it on the market, knowing that in its current state, she probably wouldn't get out of it what she owes on the property. So we decided to go into an agreement where we are putting the funds into the property to renovate it. And we've agreed on a price that she will get at closing. We are updating the kitchen, flooring, paint, lighting, a lot of more the cosmetic pieces. The house itself is in solid condition and it's in a good neighborhood. It's just looking outdated. And what we've found is right now, a lot of people are cash poor, so they don't want to go into a house where they know that they're going to have to make updates or renovations, even if they're cosmetic. So our thought is by doing those types of things, we're going to be able to command a much higher price that's in line with the comps in the area instead of the house sitting on the market. And so that one is actually going on the market next week, and we're very excited about it. So that's been one of the most interesting ones because we're working in conjunction with the seller to make it happen.
That's awesome. It's all about helping people.
It is. And I really feel like when you stop just looking at the numbers and looking at the deals and figuring out how you can solve someone's problem, it makes a much bigger impact than just going into a deal, looking at the numbers. There's always a story behind the properties or behind the business. And if you can help in any way, it's going to make sense. If there's no problem to solve, then it probably won't.
And what is the biggest profit you've made on a flip in Michigan?
You know, um, the one we're under contract on right now is probably going to be one of our biggest flips. It's going to be north of six figures. So we're pretty excited about it. We got the property in a really good deal. A lady was in and out of foreclosure. It was a property that she had inherited from her father. She had her own house and was trying to make payments on both. And she was almost 3 years behind in taxes. So she was about to lose it to tax foreclosure. So by us buying the property, she was actually able to walk away with a substantial amount versus losing it to the tax auction. And so that worked out for her. She was able to take the time, get all of her father's belongings out of there. She had a lot of memories because he lived there for the longest time. It was actually their childhood home. And so we went in, we updated the flooring, we replaced the kitchen, there was a lot of outdoor space too. It's on like a little over a half acre, so there was a lot of things to do, and there were a lot of items left behind. So we had a big cleanup, but it's going to be a beautiful home for somebody. So we can't wait to get that one closed.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see your
Yes,
post on social media.
yes, definitely.
And so, what advice would you give somebody that wants to start out investing today in any market or even the Michigan market?
I would say a couple things. I would say really dive into the markets and look for growth, population growth, job, either stability or growth. Those are two things that I would look at. And then I would really teach myself or figure out how to comp properties because I think if you know how to comp properties, you are going to be that's the most essential thing you need to know how to do in order to figure out if you're going to make a profit. Now, that's on a rental property or on a fix and flip. And I think if you can understand how to take a property and figure out what it's worth, and what that means is you want to look to see after you've made repairs to this property, what is it going to be worth or what is its after repair value? Because if you can determine what it's worth, you're going to be able to figure out what you can offer for the property, if it's a good investment, if it's a good deal, or if it's something that you should walk away from. So I would say educate yourself. That's what I did when I started. I jumped in with both feet and tried to absorb as much information as I possibly could because I thought, if I can figure out how to do this, and another thing I would say too is you don't have to know all the steps. You just need to know where to start and what your next step is to get the ball rolling. There are so many resources out there and people that you can go to for help. It's not rocket science, and I feel like a lot of people can do it. A lot of people are afraid to make the jump and start, but realize that it can be done. You don't have to have a lot of money to do it. You don't have to have a ton of experience. You just have to have, faith in yourself and the confidence to get going. And I would just say if it's something you want to do, jump in and do it.
Right, just get started. That's what we hear over and over again. I've also heard the along the same lines as what you just said, learn to underwrite, one of
Mhm.
your best skills you'll ever need and use. Great advice.
Thank
And
you.
so, how can our listeners follow you on your journey or connect with you, partner with you? How can they get a
Yes.
hold of you, Amy?
Absolutely. Well, my cell phone number is on the screen, and I can give that again. It's 586-295-7985. My Instagram is just at Amy Rende, and feel free to reach out. I'm actually compiling a digital course to help people get started in real estate if they want to learn how to buy rentals or to do fix and flips. I feel like there's so much information out there, but it's not always as clear or concise. And I really don't think this process has to be super confusing or overwhelming. You just have to have the steps laid out to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do to get people started.
I love that. Make it simple.
Yes. Make it simple. It's not, I feel like some people try to overcomplicate it or make it confusing. It's really not. You want to bring more in than is going out, and you want to have enough cushion in there. And I think if you can do that, you can make it work. I really wish I would have had the confidence to start earlier. It's I was never happy in my W-2, but I never really thought I could do anything else. And I wish I would have had confidence in myself earlier on.
That's awesome. And there
Yeah.
is an overwhelming amount of information out there. So I love that you are just making it simple and to the point. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Amy, for your time today. And thank you to all the listeners for watching. Click the subscribe button below and leave a comment. We'll catch you on the next episode.